Steve, the AHL franchise here in Des Moines, the Chops, is apparently no more, and it sounds like they owe quite a bit of jack to the parent club. The Schlegels do. What's your take on all this? Why didn't this work for them?
Well, I think what happens here in Des Moines is we're a little provincial here in this community, and we're big enough that you can make a pretty good living in this sized market, but not big enough that we can necessarily count on people to come in out of market and recover if they decide they're not going to act ethically or rape, pillage, and plunder the countryside. And I'm not saying that Schlegel Sports did that at all. I'm just thinking that maybe they ran into what the Barnstormers back in the day ran into. Jim Foster told me once that, if you don't belong to 5 or 6 families or have connections to them here in Des Moines, you have a very difficult time bringing a major attraction here because you kind of have to go through them, and they look at you as an outsider. Now, if you're Jim Foster or you're Schlegel Sports, you may view that group of people as some kind of sinister cabal that is conspiring to stop new money from coming in unless it has an earmarking to go to them. Or if you're a member of that group, you probably look at it differently and say, hey, we've protected the jobs and the economy here in this community for a generation or two, and because of the capital and the commodities that we have been able to build, we've put millions of Iowans to work. We've sent thousands of their babies to college, to go off and get good-paying jobs to raise their grandbabies. So that's just the cost of doing business in a community of this size. So regardless of what happened, I think that's probably what happened. Or what side of that debate you come down on, that's probably what happened with the Stars / the Chops. I mean, you look at the radio contracts that they have, they're non-entities. They're with stations that are largely non-entities in our market. Their promotional venues are largely non-entities in our market. And if you can get involved with relationships with these groups, what will happen is they're just sharing the same amount of money for a marketing budget, except they budget it to go over here, then they budget it to go over there, and then it ends up making a full circle because they're basically all part of one consortium of the like-minded. So you look at the Iowa Energy, you have Jerry Crawford there, and he's very active in state Democratic Party circles. You look at the Iowa Barnstormers, you have Jeff Lamberti there, and their roster of employees looks like the roster of the Republican Party of Iowa, and that's not a coincidence. Families and big-time people get together. They sort of divide up the spoils and make sure that everybody makes money in the end, and it's done that way, just like it's done everywhere else. And, Schlegel and his group just found themselves, I think, on the outside in with that as Jimmy Foster did, John. So I think what you'll see happen in the future is, now that they've proven it has a niche and that you can get crowds, if you build it, they will come, local ownership will eventually take over for them. And because it's local, they'll get a deal probably from the county for Wells Fargo much more fortuitous than the one that the Schlegels got. And that's not necessarily because it's a conspiracy. It's because the Schlegels are outsiders. You don't know who they are. So you're going to make sure that they pay a little bit more up front, that they pay a little bit more per month. It's a little bit like when you go to get a loan. If your credit is bad, your interest rate is higher. Well, if you're a local company, if you're a local family, if you're the Crawfords, you're the Lambertis, you're the Krauses, you're the Counties, you're the Knapps, etc., you've been here for decade after decade after decade building wealth and commodities here in the city. So since everybody kind of knows one another, you might necessarily give them more of a deal that might be more user-friendly on the arena like Wells Fargo, and that's where I think we'll go next. I think there will definitely be hockey here next year, but I think it will be locally owned, and I think it'll be, who it'll be, I don't know. The Crawford group tried to originally get into the Stars before they got into the Energy, so I don't know if he's got the wherewithal to take on 2 entities like this. Maybe it'll be a consortium of several different ones, but I think you will see hockey next year, and they'll pick up from where the Schlegels left off here with the Stars and the Chops, and they'll localize it, and it'll be a local ownership group.
When you say the 5 families, do you mean like just families, or do you mean like mi familia?
Nice. My birth family name is Anania, and my late grandfather, was a judge here in this community, and my uncle, who probably doesn't even know him, his nephew, Sam, used to be on the city council. There used to be all kinds of rumors about, anytime Italians have any little bit of success, there's always room or there's always rumors that it's not necessarily on the up and up. I think this is probably just a case of people have been here and been very successful for a very long time. And you just have a tendency to run into each other. It's a little bit like, you work in the media, you work here long enough, John, you kind of just know who everybody else in the media is, and when there's a community of the like-minded, you have a tendency, if you're not a complete outside rebel like me, to sort of look out for each other, and make sure everybody knows kind of what's going on and everything's on the up and up. And I think that's probably just what happens with this particular crowd. I don't think it's some cabal that meets in the basement of the Skull and Bones Society. I don't want to get all C-Tech on everybody. I don't think it's quite to that magnitude. But do I think that you are better off doing business knowing those kinds of people in this community? Sure. Just like you'd be better off knowing those kinds of people in every community that you want to do business.